Viewers and listeners, welcome to the Carbone Lawyers LawLab podcast series. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm the managing partner of Carbone Lawyers. With me, I've got an accredited specialist and the head of litigation and in personal injuries at Carbone Lawyers, John Carancis. Good evening, John.
Hi, Tony. Hi, viewers. Hi, Shifa.
And Shifa Sheikh, she's an up-and-coming lawyer at Carbone Lawyers, and she's looking after class actions.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, John.
Now, viewers, we've got an episode that's very interesting because there's been an absolute increase in these types of cases. We're going to be talking about class actions today.
However, before we get to that, Tony, what's in the news?
John, you know there's been a lot of stories in the news.
Well, yes. Apart from Collingwood and the racist stuff, what else, Tony?
Oh, look, that issue about racism, it's ongoing. There's so many problems. Even this thing around Australia Day, changing dates and this and that.
That's right. It's called Invasion Day now, Tony.
What's going to happen to you when they change it from the 26th? There goes your birthday holiday, John. Yes. John shares a birthday on Australia Day.
Very proudly. Proudly.
You're not going to be able to celebrate like you normally do, John. It's going to make it hard. Shifa, there's been an interesting decision by the courts involving sexual abuse victims. Can you tell us the facts of the case that we've got in front of us?
Well, recently a former altar boy who was sexually abused by a priest has been given a second chance to pursue his case, and this opens up the chance for many others to do the same. Okay.
So, John, Shifa said that he's been given a second chance. What happened? He settled these.
Back in 1996, Tony, and we're talking about historical charges against a Catholic priest, he settled his claim in 1996 for the princely sum of $32,000.
Yes.
Very meagre sum. He's gone back to court now, and the Victorian legislation has allowed people to go back to court and to revisit and re-challenge and relitigate these claims.
Well, the church were trying to say that you've accepted the amount, you've signed a release, and you're bound by that.
Well,
but the courts have said that that's unfair, haven't they?
Exactly. And now things have changed, and these abuse claims, and you and I, we've been doing quite a few at the moment.
There's a lot.
They could be worth hundreds, if not millions of dollars.
Look, in a lot of instances, the payouts are over $750.
Exactly.
And in some cases, well over into the million.
Exactly. Plus. And what we can say to all people that have been affected by this heinous crimes, that $50,000, $100,000, you should not be accepting such sums.
And even if you have, you can still pursue it. That's the beauty of this decision.
Exactly. Yeah, luckily the Victorian legislation, Parliament and the courts are looking kindly to these victims, Tony.
Effectively, they're coming out and saying that, it can't happen and people should be properly compensated.
Yes.
Shifa, what's going on with Kmart, Target and all these sorts of shops? There's a lot of injuries, I understand.
Recently they've come under the limelight for their clothing racks because the hooks are apparently injuring little children running around.
What sort of hooks were they?
The clothing rack hooks.
Yeah, and they were made of steel.
Made of steel, exactly.
Yes.
So they have to introduce plastic ones, to be more safe for the children of shoppers who are usually, distracted with all the shopping and don't have really time to look after the children. Children run around and get injured. So some of them have horrific injuries.
So you got these crazy little children running around and getting swiped by
Exactly, and some of these are pretty dangerous and sharp hooks. Because having been to Kmart a number of times myself, I think once I came close to getting injured. So definitely something needs to be done.
The sad thing about it is, John and Shifa, the problem is the height of those hooks when they're hanging is probably the same height as someone's face and possibly eye line.
Yes.
So these young children running around, you could easily take an eye out, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah, no, they're dangerous weapons, Tony.
Well, don't forget, years ago we ran that case against the Victoria Racing, and we had the tracks. Remember they used to have the running rolls made of steel? Now it's made of plastic, isn't it?
Now it's made of plastic, exactly.
Times are changing. People have got to be safety conscious.
Yeah, because jockeys were getting severely injured when they were falling off the horses onto the rails.
Yes. And plastic, you can still get injured, but chance of getting a really nasty injury are probably seriously reduced.
Exactly. And it's world standard. So what we're saying is those hooks should be all taken out and replaced with plastic.
Yeah, well, that's what the basically what the companies are doing now.
Sure.
But they're even going one step further, and they're actually making announcements over the PA when you walk into the shop saying, what are they saying, Chifa?
Or where the mics, they're actually saying that Kmart isn't a place for children to play around, so they need to be careful.
Are you sure about that? That's what people do. You take your children to let them run and loose there, don't you?
Yes, so definitely steps need to be taken to make it more safe because safety is
And look after your
paramount.
children.
Yes.
Okay,
Look
fair
after your
enough.
children.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Look, we're discussing class actions shortly, but there's been an article recently that there's a lot of ongoing breaches at a lot of different facilities, Shifa, including some ones that we've sued.
So recently, as you may have known, Victorian aged care was at the centre of crisis, and about 600 Australians died in aged care last year, and still the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission has audited many of these facilities where many residents and staff were infected, and yet they have observed that there are deficiencies. And still some of these facilities are not taking care, they are not following the guidelines, and not just adhering to common sense, because you see staff touching their face masks and then not sanitizing their hands. They're still walking around the facility with their gloves on, still not using face masks and shields. And one would have thought that they would have learned from their previous mistakes, but apparently not.
John,
Shocking.
a couple of the ones that we've actually commenced proceedings against,
Yes.
which is Epping Gardens and St. Basil's,
Yes.
they're part of this investigation that's occurred.
A damning report, Tony.
Yeah. And so with the amount of breaches that we're aware of, and this is all going to become, it'll be in a court arena
It'll be in a
eventually.
Court of law, and it'll be
Yeah.
all exposed.
But the thing is, it's hard to believe that after
ongoing.
everything that's gone down, they still appear in this report.
Report confirms that these irregularities continue.
Yeah, it's just amazing, don't you think?
It's
You'd think you would have learnt your lesson by now. All right, let's get on to this class action. What is a class action, Chifa?
So a class action is, to put in simple terms, a group proceeding. And many people think that for class actions, there's this misconception that you need hundreds of thousands of people, but that's actually not the case. All you need for a class action is 7 or more people with claims arising out of the same, similar or related circumstances, and those claims need to give rise to a substantial common fact or issue of law, and they need to be against the same defendant, and voila, then you can commence a class action.
Now, let's say for argument's sake, you're a prospective plaintiff under one of these class actions. How do you work out who's a part of the class action and who isn't?
In one sense, you automatically form part of the class action depending on the circumstances of your claim, of where your claim originates. For example, as you know, Carbone lawyers have issued 2 class actions, actually 3 class actions in respect of the coronavirus issue. One against the state of Victoria and the second lockdown.
Yep.
So everyone that has been affected by that form that class.
They lost work and they've got and or psychiatric injuries.
Exactly.
Yes.
Secondly, St. Basil's, and thirdly, Epping Gardens.
Yes.
Therefore, people that were affected by what happened at St. Basil's nursing home, the Greek Archdiocese,
Yes.
they form part of that class.
Yep.
And then the Epping Gardens nursing home, what happened at that Epping Gardens
Forms part of that
forms
class.
that class.
Okay.
So it depends on the facts that arise, that give rise to the action and your connection.
Yes.
And in one sense, you automatically become members of
Yes.
that class.
Now, Shifa, the court does give some of these so-called class members the opportunity to opt out of a proceeding, correct? Mm-hmm. Because you're automatically part of a class in Australia. Whereas in America, you've got to opt in. In Australia,
Exactly.
you need to opt out. What does that mean?
Essentially, when people opt out is when they will remove themselves from a claim, which means that they wouldn't be able to, partake in the settlement and get some kind of money out of it if there is a settlement. But otherwise, they form part of the group.
Now, John, the common question, we cop this every day. How are these class actions funded?
There's various options. Of course, the lawyers can fund it themselves, but most can't afford that. Then you have banks and private litigation funders.
Okay. And also, you need the cooperation of barristers and that, because bottom line, us lawyers, we're happy to fund it, or we're happy to
work
on a no-win, no-fee basis.
Exactly.
But then if we have to fork money out, it becomes problematic, doesn't it?
It does. Yep. And there are some barristers that may do it on a no-win, no-fee basis, but a lot don't. So
So look,
just depends.
But see, the common question, Shifa, is that do I pay? This is what the clients are asking. Do we pay as we go? Well, the answer is no. Isn't that right?
Even though carbon lawyers, in some of our cases, we get a litigation funder involved just for covering disbursements, such as, the fees of barristers, the fees of experts. Our firm has been underwriting these loans. So unless and until you get a settlement and your client or a group member, unless you get a settlement amount, you do not have to pay if you have signed our cost agreement.
At Carbone Lawyers, we act on a no-win, no-fee basis, and that's strict. You will never be charged legal costs unless we obtain compensation for you. Simple as that.
And mind you, the couple of claims against the nursing homes are pretty strong.
Oh, yes.
Look, the ones that are out there and they keep humming and ahhing, I'll join it, won't join it, I keep telling them they're part of the class.
Yeah.
Bottom line, if they don't come on board, once there's a ruling, they can't pursue their own claims, can they? It's decided.
No.
Some of them ask that, because Australia operates on a opt-out process rather than an opt-in, why should they even sign the cost agreement? Well, the reason is that when they do that, we assist them in obtaining the loans from the disbursement funders, and then through that, we get them assessed by the experts and then do the necessary. So, really jumping on board only assists them.
And if by any chance any of these people do decide not to come on board, once there's a ruling by the court, that's it. They can't go back, because otherwise it's a burden on all the parties concerned. Mm-hmm. And that goes to the issue, why are there class actions, John?
Tony, in one sense, it's actually a more efficient way of expediting and litigating a court proceeding. Instead of having 100 separate court proceedings in court, you have one court proceeding in court.
A representative plaintiff.
Representing those 100 litigants. And that one representative will basically form the basis and the claim and lead for the 100 litigants behind her.
A lot of these claims, for example, they might not be big in value.
Exactly.
But the cost is huge.
So it really, joining a class action, it levels the playing field. It helps people, individuals, ordinary Australians to go up against well-backed defendants because they have the strength of the numbers. It reminds me of the bundle of six analogy.
Yes.
One stick can easily be broken, but a bundle is so much harder to break.
Yes.
So with the numbers on their side, these individuals can actually have a stronger case against the defendants, and they can pool their efforts, their energy, and then really give a good fight.
The one thing that plays on my mind than most people is that because there's so many more people involved, there's a lot more procedure involved. Does it drag the cases out a bit, John?
Not necessarily, Tony.
Okay.
Look, litigation is complex by its own nature.
Yes.
And class action litigation, that can be even more complex. However, when you have a judge that really knows what they're doing and they push the matter along, and if the parties are ready and able to proceed with the litigation, then, we can expedite the case to a conclusion within a few years.
Yes. And also, we've still got to go through the processes, don't we? You've got to have a statement of claim, defences, replies,
interrogatories.
Discovery is important.
And you never know what can happen at mediation. And if the matter doesn't resolve at mediation, it's a full hearing.
Exactly. Anyway, guys, we've come to the end of the show. Shifa, thanks for coming on board.
Thanks for having
John,
me, Tony.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Tony. Thanks, Shifa.
Thank you.
Viewers and listeners, thanks for watching. Go to our social media platforms Also, download our episodes. Stay tuned for future episodes, and please remember to stay safe.
Don't settle for less. Carbone Lawyers.